Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
I have to bring you everywhere.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff, for having me, and the district leaders, Morty and Sandy Podman. Last night, we ended our session in Albany around 11:30. We came back this morning. I'm pretty happy with the way that my first session went up there. We passed two laws my first year. Two bills. One we're confident will get signed into law. One's a little bit more complicated right now. One bill was actually a local issue. Is anyone here familiar with the issue on Lefferts Blvd and Kew Gardens? How he is, and a few people. So there is a bridge on Lefferts Blvd over the LIR.
Yeah,
If you drive over, you may not even realize it's a bridge.
The movie
underneath, exactly, right in the movie theater. So the LIR goes underneath there,
right.
and over it is a bridge. And the MTA has pretty much neglected maintenance of that bridge over the past few decades. And the bridge is literally collapsing. Besides for it being I've been told I'm like good. Besides for the bridge being a local point of the community, there's also about 12 small business owners left on that bridge. And the bridge is literally collapsing. And the MTA really wants to sell off the bridge. They don't want to be managing that property anymore. And they want to get rid of the store owners and sell off the bridge and probably build some large apartment building. So the first bill that I passed at the Assembly was a bridge that would require the MTA to do a feasibility study on how to fix the bridge. It's very specific, gives them a very clear deadline, and the studies be focused on how to actually save it. So that bill passed the Assembly a few weeks ago and then passed the Senate. Right now, that seems to have gotten the MTA's attention, and we've had some meetings with the borough president as well. Senator Comrie and Senator Dabo are working with the MTA now. They finally have become more cooperative on having to save that, how to save that bridge. It really is just unbelievable how they can just neglect property in a bridge. The way it was actually found out, we met with a store owner who was there. The way that they realized how bad the shape of the bridge was, that she went into her back, moved something from her storage room, and started the train tracks underneath the floor. That's how it was. That's how they figured out how it was falling apart. But we got elected. I got elected in November. Got seated shortly after, and over the past few months, we're really proud of the district office that I've set up. We've helped quite close to between 1,500 and 2,000 constituents at this point. We've been putting in programming in the community. We've had a few property tax workshops. We have 2 more coming up this summer in July. You'll be getting flyers about them shortly in the mail. We've also had legal services. We've had an e-waste event. We've been trying to do a lot of programming for the community. I'm really proud of the constituent work that we've been doing, and I really have. It's never a dull moment up in Albany, but as the saying goes, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And it's been busy, it's been difficult, but I really love every day going to work, and it's exciting. It's always great to have people come into your office looking for help and being able to assist them and help them. And it's really been an honor to serve, and I appreciate so much this club support. And it's very important that we get those signatures right now. Everyone's looking, it's my first re-election, so it's important to come in strong and have a lot of good signatures. So I appreciate everyone going out and taking some time and getting myself, Senator Dabo, or Senator Comrie, or Senator Slivitsky, really depending on what part of the Assembly district you're in, getting us on the ballot up for re-election, and I really appreciate your support. Questions or no?
The second bill.
Was it an insurance bill? It's excess line insurance. Do you ever hear how celebrities insure body parts and interesting things that aren't normally categorizable? So it allows for that market to exist because it works in different ways. What was that? Nothing is going to compliments. So that was I'm on the insurance committee, so it was a bill through the insurance committee. That was my second bill. Yes, Susan.
Would that bill cover?
Hey, you're videotaping me.
You don't want it?
What was that?
Would that bill cover a prosthesis?
Yes.
Prosthesis.
I don't think it meets the minimum threshold for how much they cost.
A lot.
I'll get back to you on that. That was a question I was definitely not expecting tonight.
Maybe one last question.
Okay, no questions is good. You have another speaker, so it's fine. Nothing? Okay. Thank you very much, everyone.
Our guest speaker tonight is a city council member for Astoria, parts of Long Island City, East Elmhurst, a little bit of Jackson Heights. Is currently the chairman of the Environmental committee, but I've known him for a very long time. Started off when he was the president of the Young Debs. I just happened to walk into one meeting, and I wasn't really sure if I really wanted to come back, or I didn't really know what it was about. But Costa, I guess at that point he was just constant, was a council member. He took 5 minutes. I'll never forget. He took 5 minutes to talk to me and tell me why he was involved, why he wanted people involved, how important it was, and it was just one of those things that you just remember. And it's one of those things that stuck with me. He's been a district leader for a long time, and when term limits forced the older council member in Astoria out, we were all excited to help Costa obviously run for office. But I think his defining moments in the council, and obviously he still has 2 years to go, is the achievements that he's made environmentally for the city of New York in the span of 5 years. I don't let him get to that, but I know that there are many of them. And I think he's continued the tradition of our former council member, Jim Gennaro, but I think more importantly, he's put a very important spin on it with the current state of environmental issues and studies and the way things are trending for renewable energy. And I'm happy to say that in a small part I've worked with his office on a few clean energy, renewable energy sources for fleet trucks. So I'll give the floor to Councilmember Constantinides to kind of go over his record. I want to thank him for coming, obviously.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It is always great to be here with you all. I want to start by thanking Maureen and Sandy Palvin for all that they do. I know they've been serving this community not only as a council member, but as district leaders for a long time. And we are always grateful for everything you've done for not only this neighborhood, but the entire borough of Queens. So thank you. And your president, Jeff, who I have known a long time, for his time as a student, and now in his own right, doing amazing things, and president of your club. And being a district leader myself, I know how hard a job you guys have. Petitions, and it's that time of year. So there's petitions, there's re-elections, there's so many things going on all at once. So thank you, Jeff, for all that you do and having me here this evening. And I know there's a lot going on, so I definitely thank Dan. Dan's a great advocate in Albany. We need good assembly members like him. We sorely miss Michael Simanowicz. Mike was a really, really good friend, and he's someone we're missing, but Dan Rosenthal's doing a great job. So I appreciate all that he's doing in Albany and look forward to many more years having him as our assembly member. As Jeff said, I'm Costa Constantinides. I represent Astoria, District 22. This is kind of a homecoming, and many of you know me. I worked for Jim Gennaro for 6 years prior to being elected to the New York City Council in Astoria. So I spent 6 years here in this community, serving this neighborhood, working with many of you in this room, many of the members of the Community Board 8 for the betterment of this neighborhood. But I always lived in Astoria, so when the opportunity took to run for office there, I'd always been involved locally and politically, and decided to run for office and take the experience of working in the council to serve my neighborhood where I grew up. But I also went to Queens College, which is not that far away, so I know this neighborhood very, very well. As chair of the Environmental Protection Committee, we've been doing a lot of work. And I'm not going to go too long tonight, but I'll give you some of the highlights of the city budget and how that relates to the things that are happening here. I know Flushing Corona Park is not that far away. I know the Dragon Boat Festival is coming up in August. And one of the real important things that we're doing in the council is trying to clean our waterways. Every time it rains, every time it rains more than half an inch, it is too much for our sewer system to bear. And what ends up happening is you have something called combined sewer overflows, where when you have those rainfall events, it's too much. They end up spitting sewage into our waterways, which if you drive by Flushing Bay or Flushing Creek, right after it rains, You know, it's pretty awful. My son calls it Rotten Egg River. He's 9. But that's what we're dealing with. So as chair of the Environmental Protection Committee, I'm actually having a hearing on sewage, which I know is not sexy, but we're going to hear bills on sewage cleanup on Monday afternoon to protect our homeowners and to try to stop the amount of sewage going into our waterways. And we've also added an additional $108 million in this year's budget to help deal with cleaning up some of our waterways. Because right now what they're proposing in some parts of Queens, now to me this sounds crazy, you know that story with the old lady who swallowed a fly? You know, at the end of the story, she swallowed a horse and she died, of course. Do you remember that nursery rhyme? I'm still a 9-year-old. I still, sing that stuff occasionally, not as much as I used to. It's getting too big. But what they want to do in some parts of Queens is we know the sewage is going into the water. So they want to put chlorine to kill the sewage, to kill the bacteria in the sewage. But chlorine's not good either. So then what they want to do is put a disinfectant to kill the stuff in the chlorine to make it non-toxic. So like I said, at the end, she swallowed the horse and she died, of course. When it comes to this, we're trying to get rid of the sewage. To get rid of the sewage, we're going to put the chlorine. To get rid of the chlorine, we're going to put the disinfectant. What is that going to do to our waterways and our marine biota? Our fish, anyone who wants to swim in those waters, it's not going to be good. The Dragon Boat Festival, if it rains before that, is not going to be a terribly fun event. So we want to make sure we protect our waterways and make more investments in DEP. Because right now, all this money is funded through the water and sewer ratepayers. And you guys already pay too much. So I believe we should be paying for this out of the city, our city general budget. These dollars should be a shared responsibility because we have a shared responsibility with one another in Queens and throughout the city to make sure our waterways are clean for the future generations. You know, in Astoria, the saying is, we drive the Triborough Bridge. I still call it the Triborough Bridge. I know it's like the RFK Bridge or whatever now, but I still call it the Triborough. They start painting the Triborough. By the time they're done, it's time to start painting again.
Right.
So the same thing here. They start dredging Flushing Bay. By the time they're finished, so much sewage goes into Flushing Bay, you got to start dredging all over again. Let's just solve the problem. Let's capture the sewage. Let's do it right so we no longer have to deal with these quality of life issues in our community. Secondly, we put an additional $510 million into the Greener NYC initiative. That brings us up to about $3.5 million. We want to make sure this money is supposed to go to environmental education and environmental job training, green job training. Because there's an entire industry out there that our young people, we have Local 3 not that far away. We want to make sure our young people can join the union, make sure they're installing solar panels, they're installing geothermal systems, they're installing wind power. Because you know what, those jobs pay very, very well. They're middle-class jobs. We want to make sure that our communities are having green job training so young people can get good environmental jobs. Because the Environmental Protection Agency nationally, I don't know if you're reading this, has become the Elegant Pen Association. I can talk politics, we're a Democratic club, right? So Scott Pruitt has turned the EPA, they've spent money, your tax dollars, to have fancy silver pens for the leadership of the EPA. Now the EPA should be watching out for our environment, taking sure our air is clean, our water is clean, but they're too busy spending money on silver pens. So we need to spend money here so our students get environmental. I've built a science lab in every school, 11 of the 18 schools in my district. And I plan on building 7 more next year. Because it gives the kids in our neighborhood an opportunity to learn about biology, healthy eating, and they're hydroponic science labs. They're growing things like lettuce and tomatoes and parsley, and they're doing it in the classrooms. They don't even realize that they're learning about science. One kid came up to me with a ladybug, and he was trying to give me a ladybug for a good 10 minutes. And I was like, I don't know where I put a ladybug right now. But he was so excited. This is what we want. It's one thing to learn about science in a book, right? It's another to have it come to life in front of you. It changes the way we learn. Some people are visual learners. You read about it in a book, you don't understand it. If you see it, you get it. So we're trying to put more money into our budget so our schools can be greener, and then we have green job training when they get old enough so they can have these middle-class jobs. In addition, we put $125 million in the city budget this year for fair student funding. Now that's going to allow all of our schools to get to 90% of where they need to be. The city sued the state about 10 years ago in a campaign for fiscal equity to make sure that our schools get the maximum dollars per student. We haven't quite got there yet.
That's for sure. I know.
But we're putting the additional $125 million in so we can hire more teachers, hire more social workers, hire to have more staff in the schools, because our kids need it. We shouldn't have, my son's never had a class as a public school kid, as was I. He's never had a class from kindergarten on that has less than 30 students. That's a challenge. And that's something that we're seeing, not just in my community in Western Queens, but throughout our borough. We're trying to remove kids from trailers. We put dollars in the budget. We're working with Melinda Katz to get kids out of trailers. Now we're making sure they have enough teachers. And so there's not 30, 35 kids in a class. We get that number down with fair student funding. And the last thing I'll talk about tonight is asthma. I have legislation that they're going to hear in the council and the health committee in the fall to help deal with asthma. 80,000 kids have asthma in New York City. 4,000 are hospitalized every year.
Oh my.
Now I'll tell you, my son's one of those kids. So every morning he takes a vitamin, a pill, a allergy medication.
Oh my God.
Then he takes something to settle his stomach, and he just took all that stuff. Then he gets to eat breakfast.
Oh my God.
And we eat breakfast, and he's 9, so we argue about him watching his TV too much, or playing his video games, and not getting ready for school, not brushing his teeth the right way. You guys know this story. It's like, I don't think it's just like a now story. I think it's like generations of kids just not being in a hurry in the morning. Have to make sure you forgot your lunchbox, put your glasses on. But before we do all that, before we leave, I put a mask on his face and give him budesonide every day. That's when he's healthy, by the way. That's not when he's sick. When he's sick, add albuterol, ipratropium, oral prednisone. All the asthmatics in the room is nodding their heads. You guys know that routine. So here's what we want to do. There are 3 bills that I have to help deal with this. One is to map asthma in every neighborhood by community board. Map it by age, map it by ethnicity. So we know who has asthma and where. There's a lot of data when it comes to asthma, citywide, borough-wide. We don't have it per community board. My bill would do that. Because when you know where it is, you can probably figure out where it's coming from. Secondly, we want to put a nebulizer in every school in New York City. And before you ask me how much that's going to cost, they're all about 100, maybe 150 for a really fancy one. You talk about 1,400 schools, so what? Maybe 150,000, maybe 200,000, 300,000 tops. We buy 2. That investment, you're talking about a city budget of $89.3 billion with a B. To spend $150,000 to $200,000 to have a nebulizer in every school is a good investment. Why? 2 reasons. One, when a child's in distress, that albuterol is going to open their airways very quickly. It may save their life. Secondly, the most expensive place to enter the healthcare system is the ER room. You get picked up via ambulance and go through ER. For a lot of families, that is a $300, $400, $500 hit right off the top. So maybe that nebulizer can open up their airways to get them back to zero, get them back to a good place. Maybe they don't have to go to the emergency room immediately. Maybe they can go see their family doctor instead, where it saves that family money. And that's going to save all of us money, because many of our hospitals, we're paying for them. And then thirdly, we have a bill that would just a reporting bill that evaluates every school's asthma action plan. Say that 3 times fast.
Asthma action.
But the asthma action plan, every kid gets this. You get a little letter from the nurse saying, what is the protocol for your child when they have asthma? So we want to look at it and see, are all the schools following those protocols? Even more importantly, are the parents giving back the form with those protocols? Because if the school isn't getting those forms from the parents, then what is the point of having an asthma action plan when you don't have the plan? We want to look at this program, see if it's working, see how often it's utilized, and knowledge is power. Again, we want to make sure we put our resources to make sure it's working. If it's not working, we fix it. Now we put I'll quickly say we've done some other things in the budget. We put money in for our seniors, things like Su Casa, support our seniors, our NORCs, an additional $1 million+. We worked with Heim Deutsch, the council member from Brooklyn, to put $1 million in the budget for a pilot program for kosher and halal food. So 4 schools will be receiving this pilot program. No child should have to choose between getting a meal and having to adhere to their religious beliefs. It should just make sense. So this pilot program, I hope, is going to go well. We put additional dollars into our libraries, additional dollars into our transit system, $418 million in the MTA to fix our subways and buses, so maybe they can actually run. We put money into fair fares. And lastly, for our homeowners here, we've entered into an agreement with the mayor to have a property tax commission to evaluate the property tax system in the city of New York. There are going to be 10 hearings citywide. So I'll make sure I get your district leaders and Jeff the information is when they're going to be having these hearings in the borough of Queens. Because we all have to speak up. Because we haven't passed a property tax increase in the 5 years I've been in the council. But you wouldn't know it from seeing your tax bill. Because every year the assessments are going like this. So we have to get it under control. We have to work with great assembly members like Dan Rosenthal in partnership to take this apart and get it right. So we want you to come out. We want you to testify because we know it's gotten. Your home is the largest investment you've ever made. And we want to make sure that we're not pricing people out of New York City through taxes and water fees and everything else. So we want to make sure we get this right because there are parts of Queens that are paying more taxes than Park Slope. Not because of the homeowners, the values are higher, because the property tax system is broken. You should be paying for what your house is worth, not where your neighborhood is. Doesn't make sense. So that's just some of the stuff we did in the city's budget. I'm happy to take any questions you have, and again, I'm really happy to be here with you. I appreciate you being part of this process, especially now, because honestly, we need Democrats, we need good Democrats. We have to stand up and be counted and make sure that this year's election, we re-elect our Congress members, send our good Democratic Congress members like Joe Crowley and Grace Main back to D.C. Maybe Joe Crowley have a larger role in the speaker in the House of Representatives this coming year, and we can have accountability over this president to say you can't just do whatever you want. There's a rule of law here. There's a constitution. People have died for that constitution. You just don't get to do whatever you want. No one gets to do what they want. We all have to adhere to the rule of law because that's who we are as Americans. We adhere to the rule of law to take care. We have a responsibility to one another, not just the whims of any one individual. So I thank you all, and I'm happy to take any questions you guys have.
On that tax panel,
Yes.
do you have representation from co-ops and condos?
There will be, I will look into that.
Because from my understanding, there is no representation from anybody who's been in the grassroots of that tax issue for co-ops and condos.
We haven't made appointments yet from the council, so I'll make sure I bring that back.
Yeah.
It hasn't been appointed yet, so.
It hasn't been?
We created it. We're gonna appoint the people to the commission now. Okay. So I'll make sure I bring that back to the council. I definitely want to, we have co-ops and condos all over Queens. We want to make sure that they're part of this conversation.
Paul, you mentioned the MTA.
Yes.
Don't do that, in order to, people make less money, they'll give them a half
The
fare.
fair fares, yes.
You know, what about people pay regular fares, they're gonna go up quicker? I mean, the MTA is always broke.
No, this
It's
is,
going away.
It's nothing to do with that.
well, this money is coming from the city budget, not the state budget. So the MTA, this is subsidizing the individuals, not subsidizing the MTA. That's an important distinction. You know, the MTA plays this money, this game, it's almost like three-card Monte, the cards are always moving. You know, we saw that with John Liu, where he caught them with 2 sets of books.
Yeah.
But, you know, this is actually,
That's not right.
this is going right to the individuals. These are people that are working, who are making, or want to go to work, who are making less than the poverty level. We want to make sure people can get to their job. We want to make sure people can get to their job interviews. We want people to be able to get there.
But they're gonna raise the fare.
They're not.
because
Well, they're not. I mean, this is coming from the city to subsidize them. This doesn't go to the MTA. It's not going to make them. You know, I personally believe the fare's too high already, and we have to get back. We have to get back the service for the price that we're paying.
Right.
We can't just keep getting increases. I understand there's inflation, but we have to do a better job. They closed the trains in my community. They spent $150 million on upgrades in my neighborhood. Let that sink in. For 6 train stops, $150 million.
Not even open.
Now here's what we got. Yeah, well, almost nothing.
Almost, I know.
Almost nothing. We got station art.
Mm-hmm.
We got Wi-Fi in an open air above ground station. We got benches that lean against the wall because you want people sitting down. Here's what we didn't get. We didn't get elevators, but one station's getting an elevator next year. We got no new track work and no new signal work. So the station will be very pretty when the train doesn't come by. So this is what we're fighting against. So I agree with you. We have to get a modicum of service back before we can even talk about an increase. Because we already pay too much. And there's only so many times, being honest, there's only so many times your boss will hear you out on saying the trains are late. Right? I mean, we're talking about an economic crisis in our city when the trains and buses don't run.
I simply, traveling elsewhere in the world,
Mm-hmm.
never heard a train stop because it's supposedly the reason of another train ahead of it. Ever. Number one. Number two, I can tell you that in Europe, in Spain, for example, they give tourists a card for the train that's 10 rides for 10 euros. And we are paying triple that as citizens, not even tourists. So I don't understand, like, the system when you see other places, it's completely, it doesn't work at all.
I agree with you. I mean, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I don't like the excuses, and why can't we just have the train come and go? Why is there train traffic? It's not like it's a car. I understand it's a car. But I mean, when you think about it, it's mind-blowing. And I never knew this until I started traveling other places in the world. And I was like, because before then I thought New York was the best system ever.
We have an answer.
Look, I mean, there are some things about New York City's transit system that are really amazing. We are open 24/7. We are open 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But the frustrating thing is, I agree with you. I ride the trains all the time. I don't drive into work. I take the train. And we have to do better. You know, we have to make sure people can get to work on time, get to school on time. It's a travesty. We have to get it right. And, you know, there shouldn't be any excuses. We put additional $418 million out to fix this. This is your tax dollars. These are monies that we could have used for parks and schools and libraries, and instead we're giving it to the MTA to fix the mess that they created.
And don't even start me on the cleanliness.
Oh, that's a whole other story. Go ahead, I'll go here in a minute.
Yeah, so my understanding of the problem with the MTA is not just the lack of funding, but also terrible management in recent years. Is there any way that the city council, aside from just giving more money to the MTA, can somehow rein in the mismanagement that's plagued the MTA?
We're trying. We don't have the city, as much as there's disagreement over who has control of the MTA, we have less appointees than the state does. So we can't change management. We don't appoint who runs it. I really feel we need a dedicated funding source for the MTA. And there's an idea of a millionaire's tax, those making over $1 million a year, paying more. There's lots of different ideas out there. We need to come up with an idea that works, because frankly, if there's not a dedicated funding source, when things get tough, right now we have a little bit more money, the taxes are coming in, things are working well. In an economic downturn, and that's one thing I didn't talk about tonight, we put an additional $225 million in the bank. So now we have about $9.9 billion in the rainy day fund. But if the rainy day does come, we need to make sure we can keep funding things like subway improvements. So, the $9.9 billion just keeps us at zero, doesn't add new ones, doesn't add new money. So we have to make sure we have a dedicated funding source so that things go in a different direction in our economy, in this city, in this state, that we're still able to do things like fix the trains, because they're not in good repair. Our buses are not in good repair.
That's for sure.
It takes too long for us to get to work and to school, and so a dedicated funding source. I would love for us to have more control. I believe the city should have more control. We're not there yet. So right now, the thing we can do is provide more funds. Back there? And then,
You mentioned briefly additional money for the libraries.
Yes.
Is that enough money for all the Queens libraries to be open both weekend days?
not yet. Not yet. We provided an additional $16 million. Part of it is something called a one-shot, which we were able to negotiate with the council to put in the money, but not the mayor. So that's a one-year thing. It's to help to go to programming, additional computers, technology. We're trying to get to a 7-day service. We're not there yet. But that's something I feel strongly about too, because as a parent, the one day I can take my son to the library is Saturday and Sunday if it was open. And during the week, it's really hard to get out of work to take your kid to the library before it closes.
Is there an estimate of how much money it would cost to do both these?
Off the top of my head, I know it's in the tens of millions. For all the city libraries to be open 7 days a week, it's in the tens of millions of dollars. We're not there yet. I can't tell you exactly. I think it's like 25, 40, somewhere in that neighborhood. I'll make sure I get the answer back to you guys.
Did it used to be?
What it used to be? What? How long ago? I mean, we just put an additional 20-somewhat million dollars in. We actually got them to baseline that dollars to have it open 6 days a week. To go from 5 to 6. To go from 6 to 7, I haven't been in government when it was open 7 days a week. In the good years, right before the economic downturn in 2007, 2008, we had just agreed with Chris Quinn and Mike Bloomberg to get it open 6 days a week. So we haven't been able to get every library open 7 days, at least while I'm in government. Which isn't the end-all be-all. I've been in government 12 years. But still, in 12 years, we haven't gotten there yet. Okay. Any other questions?
Anybody have any other questions?
All right, go ahead.
I was just wondering, because you said in the beginning when you said that they're trying to put chlorine in the water, who's they?
The city DEP.
And then that's who you oversee?
That's correct. So we're trying to get them not to do that. I just don't think it's a good idea.
Well, and what's the option against that?
Well, the other option is something called UV rays. To use that instead. UV rays would be less toxic. It wouldn't be the chlorine. There wouldn't be the disinfectant to clean up the chlorine. It's feasible, but it's something that the DEP doesn't feel is cost effective at the moment. We disagree. We're running different numbers, so we're trying to come to agreement. We're usually able to find an agreement. In this case, we haven't been able to agree yet.
Is there an overall project to get the flooding to stop, or the sewage to stop overflowing?
Well, that's the $108 million we're trying to put in this year's budget. To get it completely to stop is in the tens of billions of dollars. So that's why we can't put that on the backs of the water and sewer ratepayers. Because you're talking about a very small segment of our city paying the lion's share of cleaning up the entirety of our waterfronts. That's not a fair bargain. It would make your water rates go through the roof to do all that. So what we need to do is bring that particular project as part of city capital to make sure that we're all sharing the pain, and not just those who are paying for their water and sewer ratepayers. Because, like I said before, this doesn't make any sense to do that.
Costas, wouldn't recycling garbage help, like keeping all of your vegetables and non-fat products that you can throw into your gardens and letting the paper stuff be separate?
I mean, everything helps. Everything helps. I mean, we need to do more recycling. We recycle some very ridiculously low number. I'm not on the sanitation committee anymore, but I think it's somewhere around 18% or a low number of what we recycle in the city of New York. We need to recycle more. Organics would be a great way to do it. That's something I feel strongly about. We have to start recycling more and get more about our garbage stream. We have way too much garbage. We have nowhere to send it. We spend way too much money on biosolids and things, shipping our garbage and our biosolids out of the state of New York. There was a issue where some of our bio-waste, I don't want to get too graphic, but some of our bio-waste from the sewage treatment plants were taken by train down to Alabama, and then the city in Alabama wouldn't take it. And those trains sat there for close to a week or 2 weeks, smelling up those communities. So we need to do better on recycling, finding other good uses for that waste, because we just can't, there's going to be a finite number of places that'll take it. And at some point, they're not going to take it, then where do we go? So we have to try to find a better way forward. Go ahead.
When the Department of Transportation decides on a bike lane, do they consult you in your community?
Yes. So what I'll say is this on bike lanes. I agree with Melinda Katz. There should be a borough-wide plan for bike lanes.
Exactly.
There should be a plan. We shouldn't be fighting different fights where bike lanes end in nowhere. Right? You have one bike lane ends and all of a sudden just stops. There should be a plan. We should have communities and community boards chime in on those plans. We should have one unified sort of process, not neighborhood by neighborhood fighting these out. It just doesn't make any sense to do it. It's a waste of resources. It's a waste of community energy. We should just do this all at once rather than trying to do a piecemeal, because doing a piecemeal creates all the angst.
And primarily, they're putting bike lanes, for example, on Queens Boulevard. And stores are going out of business who have been there for 70 and 80 years because their business is down.
I know for my neighborhood, we've had to put some certain bike lanes in, and some of them worked. But I understand there's a balance. We want to make sure that people are safe, that nobody's dying, no one's crossing the street and getting killed by a car. We had an accident, well, not an incident, I won't say an accident, where a driver ran over a young child on Northern Boulevard about a month ago. No parent should ever have to deal with that, ever. So there's a balance. We should find it. There's a way to make sure we protect businesses and make sure communities have a voice and still have a plan and protect kids. There's a way to do it. We just have to do it better. I don't think we're doing it right now. I think we're fighting these fights neighborhood by neighborhood rather than saying, let's have a seat at the table. Let's talk to each other. Let's work this out. I think we work together. We can find a plan that works for everybody, but not just we listen to this group, we listen to that group. We need to all come together and fix it.
This bicycle lane took all the free parking away.
200.
On Queens Boulevard.
On Queens Boulevard,
On
yes,
Queens
all
Boulevard.
the free parking. They could have made one sharing, but no, and because of that, people can't get into the neighborhood. If you live there, you're parked. So if you're coming out of the neighborhood to a store or any place, you can't come in. It's awful, and I haven't seen one bicycle. I'm there
Oh, yeah, I think trucks do like
twice
double park.
a week. I'm on Queens Boulevard. I have never seen a bicycle go by.
That's right.
I mean, I can't, I haven't driven on, I've driven on Queens Boulevard. I haven't driven this far in a long time. It's been
awful.
6 years.
It's awful.
But I'll say that I know where I am, it's a little bit difficult because I have to drive when you get off at like 60th Road to get to the BQE, you have to go through the bike lane and be at a complete stop to have to speed through. We have to make sure we do this right. Like I said before, there's a way to protect people crossing the street. There's a way to make sure everyone is protected, everyone plays by the rules, and that we can take care of one another. We can do that. We're all smart. We just have to hear one another and make it work. We've had some bicycle lanes work in my neighborhood, and I hear from other communities that bike lanes aren't working for them. There's a way that we can all sit down and figure this out. And I want to find that
A lot of the
solution.
bicycle lanes in your neighborhood have street lights for the bikes.
Yeah.
So you can, especially near the Grand Central where you come off the Triborough.
Right.
There's a lot of lights.
Go ahead. And here.
okay.
Yeah.
So, I'm a cyclist and I've used the bike lanes for a year and on Queens Boulevard. I do have to say that I see plenty of people using them. The real problem is actually a lot of cars that park on the bike lanes and stay there for half an hour and block the bike lane. That forces cyclists to have to go around them, which increases the risk of a car crashing into a cyclist and causing a crash.
I hear you.
And on top of that, like I've heard, there are studies showing that bike lanes actually lead to an increase in revenue for businesses in that area. So I'm not sure what the businesses coming down and the placement of bike lanes there.
I think there's a way that, again, I think we can, I think there's a way we can figure out this thing together, right? I think there's a way that we can hear one another and make this work. It's happened in other places, we can figure it out. I'm not gonna go back and forth, and I don't wanna mediate a debate tonight on bike lanes. I don't think you want me to do that. But,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I have a statement and a question.
Sure.
The fact is that bike lanes are putting businesses out. There's no question about it. And, for example, Ben's Best in Forest Hills. I mean, that's like an iconic, where we're gonna get a corned beef sandwich in the neighborhood. We can't get it anymore.
He's closing up.
Yeah, he's
All right,
closing
what's
up.
the question?
Now, I was just curious, whose idea was it to put all these bike lanes in?
Wait, who put the bike lanes
Yeah,
into the neighborhoods? I mean, it's the Department of Transportation, usually they work with the community board, they work with the elected officials in instances, so that's how they get placed. And usually there's studies that are done, there are scientific studies that are done that try to guide these folks.
But doesn't the city realize that they're putting not just a few businesses out, they're putting lots of businesses?
I think that I'm trying to find the right way. I don't work for the DOT, by the way. So I don't know every conversation of why they do certain things in certain communities. I know in my neighborhood, we did a study, we looked at it, we made sure that it worked for everybody, it would make our community safer, and it worked. We had someone who got killed crossing in the crosswalk by Astoria Park. Run over in the crosswalk. We ended up putting bicycle lanes around Astoria Park to slow down traffic, to make it safer, because the street right next to Astoria Park, you have the water, you have a street, you have the park. I know my son wanted to run from the park to the water, because it's beautiful. If you've been to Western Queens, it's a beautiful, beautiful view at Astoria Park. We wanted to slow that traffic down, so if a child or a family are walking across the street, they don't get killed. It made sense. So we can find things, we can find common ground with one another. And I think we can. In this instance, we were able to find something that made sense for the neighborhood, make the traffic slower, and it's not hurting Agnante, who is, has a restaurant, a sidewalk cafe right by the park. They're doing well. We made it work for everyone. I think if we can do that, we can emulate that throughout the borough of Queens and make sure that we protect one another and take care of one another. Because at the end of the day, that's what government's supposed to do. We're supposed to take care of one another, look out for one another, and make sure our policies do that for everybody. That's how government's supposed to work. That's how city government should work, and we're trying to find that middle ground to take care of everybody, and I think it can be done.
Next question.
To take it back to environment,
All right, sounds good.
We've had some movement on straws as far as the issue of plastics. Styrofoam is about to be forbidden. There's some state movement on plastic bags. Where do you think we're going as far as the city is concerned, as far as plastic bags?
So plastic bags, we're out of the plastic bag business. The state has claimed primacy over that issue, so the state's going to make a decision on what's going to happen with plastic bags. When it comes to plastic straws, what I will say on plastic straws and plastic in general is that we're choking our planet. There is plastic floating in the middle of our oceans that are miles wide. Our fish, our whales, our dolphins, our sharks, all of the marine, we are choking our planet through all this plastic. We can use a paper straw in many instances that's just as good. It can be recycled. It's not going to change the way you drink your soda or anything else that you drink. There are certain instances, though, I have heard from the disabled community about still needing plastic straws for certain things. I totally get that. We'll make sure we get that right and take care of our those who need plastic straws. But we can substitute paper, and that substitution will go a long, long way. We have the support of the Bronx Zoo, the Queens Zoo. Anyone who's protecting animals realizes that we shouldn't have plastic floating in our oceans miles wide. So this will be a small step the city can take to deal with that. When it comes to plastic bags, the state has claimed primacy over that issue. Governor Cuomo has proposed a bill. It didn't get passed this session. It might get passed next session. We'll see what happens when Dan and everybody else goes back up in January. We'll have a new assembly. We might have a Democratic state senate. Well, that remains to be seen. I hope that we do, because we have a lot of great state senators like Tobias Stavitsky and Joe Adabo, and we need all of our state senators to be in the majority. Because in all honesty, the reason it's the most important is we have New York City people representing our interests. Right now, we have folks from Buffalo and Long Island and Syracuse who are making decisions on policy for New York City, for our schools, for our roads. They don't live here, but they're telling us, here's how much taxes you should pay, here's how much funding your schools are going to get, here's if you're going to have speed cameras or not. It shouldn't work that way. So if we have a Democratic state senate, we'll actually be able to have policy that's generated from the city that's going to take care of the whole state. I'm not saying that we should have complete run of the state, but we should have an ability to pass legislation for our own communities in the same way other neighborhoods do, and right now we're not getting that.
Okay.
All right, guys, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
I want to bring up our district leader, our former councilman, Morty Pavin, and say a few words.